But I'm optimistic about this entire division. You're going to hear it.
Seriously.
I'm optimistic about all of them.
Yep.
Including the Broncos. They're up next. And a year ago, we weren't as high on the Broncos. We didn't know what to expect with them. I'm probably going to need your take on the Sean Payton analytics here that were going around. But 10-7 last year, Denver Broncos. I think one of the surprise stories, really competitive. Bo Nix, I thought, had a really slow start, finished strong. And I think for the first time since Sean Payton left New Orleans, we started to really see him in that offensive guru, genius type of lens that he used to have. And then the Broncos defense, man, just flying around, unbelievable pass rushers. Not necessarily star-driven beyond Patrick Surtain, but just a good, solid roster across the board. And I think that's where people slept on the Broncos, myself included, last year, was just how solid they would be top to bottom on that roster.
Yeah.
And they did a really nice job last year. They're over under this year's 9.5 as well.
Yeah, they were very good last year. The big question is just, was what we saw from Bo Nix real, or did he just hit a good vein of form and look really good in the second half of the season? If it was real, like if that was his development arc, where early in the season, incredibly low average depth of target, incredibly risk averse, not bringing that much to the table, bringing more of a rushing threat than a passing threat. That it didn't look good early on, but then he just hit a groove, and suddenly you're seeing, he does look like a perfect quarterback for a Sean Payton offense. And Sean Payton seemed to be broadening what he was calling now, having more faith in the quarterback. You had more of a big play threat. He was being more aggressive, pushing the ball deeper down the field. You still have the rushing threat, which I think people always underestimate with Bo Nix. If that's real, if that's where he was going, and I know, again, it's a bit like the Bryce Young thing. You look at some of the stats in terms of how many hundreds of yards did he throw for in this game? Some of them weren't spectacular at all, but he played well for a lot of that second half. If that was a genuine indication of his development, you have to feel good about Denver overall.
I would almost push it the other way, because he had 4 touchdowns, no picks in the last game against the Chiefs in Week 18.
Well, he's the
against
argument.
Their backups.
Yeah.
Broncos fans are like, these are historical stats. He completed 66% and 29 touchdowns. Rookies never do this. I thought that was a little bit fake as well.
But he's also the argument against the point I made with Justin Herbert, which is if you sort of sneak into the playoffs as a wild card type of team, you're going to face these good teams, and you're behind the 8 ball. Bo Nix played well against Buffalo. It's not like it was a massive output game, but he played well in that game in a way that I don't know that Herbert has played in the postseason. So it's not like it's impossible to play well if you're an underdog team in the playoffs, but it does, I think, make it more challenging.
So, yeah, this Broncos team, man, I think they've got a good offensive line, an intriguing good group of playmakers. It's Cortland Sutton, and then a whole bunch of guys that can contribute.
Troy Franklin, breakout season.
Troy Franklin's already tearing it up at camp. We're waiting for him and Marvin Mims to go off here, but especially Franklin. So they have a lot of options there. And then, like I said, defensively, they were one of the tougher defenses in the league last year. Pass rush coming from all over the place. And I think they tightened up some of their weaknesses, added incredible depth in free agency and in the draft. So I think they're in a good spot. The one thing I'll add about Bo Nix, early on, I thought his intermediate passing was the big question. 10-plus yard throws, his accuracy was all over the place. I think what Nix did to remain efficient was use his legs. He was a timely scrambler. I thought he picked up a whole bunch of hidden yards. I think that almost bought him some time as he was developing as a passer.
Yeah.
I say that a lot about running quarterbacks.
It does, yeah.
More so in the designed running game, where I say, look, Anthony Richardson, while he's developing, we got the designed run game. That'll open up things in the passing game. It'll buy you some time. I think we saw that with Bo Nix, right? There were some ugly passing games in there, but he would find a way to convert first downs and use his legs and just hit a couple passes and keep them competitive. And then by the end of the year, you're like, all right, things are getting better and better for Bo Nix here. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens in year 2 of his development here.
No, he had a ton. I mean, his scrambling was huge. Like you said, it wasn't necessarily part of the design run game, but the point is a rushing quarterback can buy himself wiggle room by the point is keeping the chains moving, right? It doesn't really matter how. Usually when you have an athletic, dynamic quarterback, you're going to create designed runs for the guy in today's NFL, and that's how those guys can buy themselves room. But the point is just keep the chains moving. So Bo Nix's was less in the design run game, and it was more scrambles. But the point is he kept the chains moving. So he had a lot of scrambles over the course of the season where, again, I think people underestimated his athleticism, and that absolutely bought him a bunch of first downs. It bought him a bunch of extended drives that if he was simply relying on his arm would not have been there.
They also had very little run game. They were not getting.
Yeah, I mean, he led the team rushing in a bunch of games.
Javonte Williams didn't look the same. Audric Estime fumbled once, and they never gave him the ball. That was a mistake, not giving Estime the ball a little bit more. But this year, with the entire offensive line coming back, they drafted R.J. Harvey in the second round. O-line looks like one of the league's best, in part just because there's continuity. They're all coming back, and they're good across the board. Including Quinn Miners, who we've talked up quite a bit here as a top 2 or 3 guard in the NFL, like their tackles and Garrett Bowles and Mike McGlinchey. They're good. They're good offensive up front from an O-line perspective, both pass protection and run block-wise. So they should have a better run game if one of those guys hits. They bring in J.K. Dobbins, once again, when he's healthy, big playability, right? He was still rattling off 40, 50-yard runs last year with the Chargers when he's healthy. And then pass catcher-wise, I'm intrigued, man. I thought Marvin Mims had a really nice breakout second half in more of a gimmicky type of role, moving him around, putting him in the backfield. Troy Franklin's getting a lot of buzz. Pat Bryant is getting a lot of buzz. There you go, Walt. You were talking him up all throughout the draft. He ran 4.6, but he plays faster and he's pretty good. Devon Vele was a really nice 7th-round pick last year. So they have all of these pretty good pieces, some speed, some possession types, and then Courtland Sutton as the main guy. I think their receiving core is going to be pretty solid.
It felt like, I don't know if it was just coincidental timing or if it was cause and effect, but once Bo Nix started to play better and Sean Payton started to get a better handle on, how to open things up for Bo Nix, he also got a much better feel for how to play to the strengths of all the other players on offense as well. Like that's when Marvin Mims started to get the role that was turning him into a playmaker. If that's where Sean Payton is, again, it doesn't really matter whether or not Bo Nix is the catalyst there, but if that was real and that was a Sean Payton starting to get it together again with this group, there's reason for optimism for all those guys. The Franklin thing, I mean, it's a little bit of a bit because we really liked Troy Franklin coming out and he was not good last year. He was, however, open a lot last year. I mean, the reason he wasn't good is because he dropped a bunch of deep passes or, was just missed on a bunch of deep targets. But maybe the more important point is he was open quite a lot behind the defense for big explosive plays. And if that simply regresses to the mean or goes in the opposite direction, it's very real that Franklin could explode and have a significant role.
Hey guys, real quick, only 40% of our viewers are actually subscribed, so let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and now let's get back to the action. You know me, I've said that for years. The more important skill is the getting open deep. There's not a lot of guys doing that.
I mean, I'm not willing to say that it's more important, but it's certainly relevant.
Concede your point that we've argued about for over a decade. My point is, if you're going to get open 10 times, the average receiver gets open 3 times, and you're going to get open 10 times down the field. If you only catch 7 of them, you're still adding value, right? Oh, it's an ugly drop. Oh, you did it again, Troy. It doesn't matter. I'm adding 4 other explosive plays that everyone else is not. So oversimplifying here, but yeah, I think Troy Franklin's explosiveness, Marvin Mims' explosiveness, Courtland Sutton's dependability, there's potential here from a pass catching group. And then they added in Evan Ingram in a year where everybody wanted to mock a first-round tight end for them. I think Evan Ingram's just a really good, dependable possession type tight end as well. So this is the team I'm going to say the word solid for more than any other team because that's what they are up and down this roster.
Yeah, it feels like, when you get those offensive lines, they creep back to what average thing, but if you've got 5 solid offensive linemen, you have like a top 5 offensive line just by not having a weakness, right? The Broncos roster feels like the roster version of that. If you are just solid everywhere, you have one of the 5 best rosters in the NFL simply by not having gaping gaps in it.
The run game is also going to be fascinating. We mentioned how bad it was last year, but J.K. Dobbins' explosiveness, Jaleel McLaughlin's shiftiness, R.J. Harvey's a bowling ball, and then Audric Estime, who we still think is awesome. I think is awesome. So out of those 4, I think they'll find someone to be more efficient running the football.
I'm fascinated by R.J. Harvey in this offense. I mean, they released their first unofficial depth chart the other day, and all the rookies are like 4th string. So it's sort of like don't read anything into that. They're obviously one of those teams that's like, no, you got to earn your way up the depth chart. You're starting off at the bottom. But I wouldn't be surprised if R.J. Harvey was like a huge part of that backfield. And he is so dynamic, so difficult to tackle. How they platoon that with Harvey and Dobbins and McLaughlin and maybe Estime as well remains to be seen. But, I mean, he's so explosive. That could be a really dynamic backfield on top of, the Bo Nix threat, even if it's just a scramble threat, the receiving threat as well on the outside. I mean, there's explosive playmakers there.
All right, let's try to do this next bit in under 2 minutes. The Sean Payton story about how he discovered Bo Nix?
I skimmed it. If there's salient pieces in there that I need, you might have to articulate them, or for anyone that didn't read it.
I know this mostly Broncos fans are going to be watching this. It's just it's a funny world because we have 2 straight years of here's how much Sean Payton loved Bo Nix, right? There's 2 years of
the backpack
stories. He was still picked. He was still the 6th quarterback off the board.
Sure.
And picked 12 overall.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, if you really found the best negative play avoider since Patrick Mahomes, if you really found that, would you have traded up for him? Wouldn't you be worried that one of those other 5 teams that was going to draft a quarterback? That's just the starting point. It wasn't like, okay, they got him where they got him. Fine. The analytics that Sean Payton used, like sack percentage and interception percentage, so is like the lowest negative plays that they saw. That's what he saw in Mahomes. It's an interesting one because I think what we have found through the years is that negative plays are a little bit more under the QB's control than positives.
Yeah.
If you were looking at positive plays, explosives, or however you want to chart those are a little bit more dependent on the supporting cast. So I think it is interesting because I've come to a similar conclusion thought process-wise. But anytime you're using numbers to project quarterbacks, it's not clean whatsoever.
Not.
Because I think if you look at the other players that are close to Mahomes or Nix in this avoid negatives world over the last couple of years, you'd probably find like Gardner Minshew, or you'd probably find a whole bunch of other players who did not become Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
And this isn't to say that Bo Nix had a better number than Patrick Mahomes.
I mean,
therefore, that's what he'll become. I think we're a little too early on that.
The Cliff Notes version of this thing seemed to be that Sean Payton arbitrarily pulled out like half a dozen QB or QB adjacent stats that he liked that are generally avoid negatives, added them all up and divided them by the number he had and just created an average. It's like, well, this guy is the best average of this, therefore he's the best, right? The fair representation?
Yes.
The thing that I find funny about
Paytonomics.
that, right? The thing that I find funny about that is in the same week that former Broncos legend Mark Schlereth is like, analytics are dumb. Right? Analytics people are idiots. You've got Sean Payton doing like bootleg analytics, on his own, just randomly. It's like my point when I tweeted about the Schlereth thing is analytics have existed as long as football has existed, right? When old coaches are sitting in a dark room like this with an old reel-to-reel, like manually splicing film to watch tape of their opponents, that is analytics. They just didn't have the name analytics at the time. All analytics is trying to create information or trying to create insights out of information, right? Which is tendency study. That's analytics. It's just a different name. So analytics is not dumb. Is analytics applied stupidly by stupid people? Absolutely. Are there stupid people in all walks of life? 100%, right? That is your problem, not analytics. Like if you've heard an idiotic argument by a person that was talking about numbers, analytics isn't the problem. The problem is you were talking to an idiot, right? So this is evidence of how important analytics is, that Sean Payton, who presumably doesn't have a math background or a data science background, or essentially is unqualified to do this, is still doing it by himself because he believes there's power in it, right?
Oh, coaches.
That's how important analytics is as a concept, is like a head coach who has no earthly idea what he's doing when it comes to analytics. He'll still try to run his own like bootleg analytics operation to get his quarterback.
And that's how we found Bo Nix.
Yes. That and the backpack. When he spilled his backpack out, there was nothing in there but football stuff.
Football. All right, let's go defensive side of the ball as we've gone off the rails here for the Broncos. But, man, they were impressive last year. I thought they hit a stretch where cornerback 2 was an issue. But Patrick Surtain, outstanding on that on one side. Riley Moss, and then they just drafted Jahdae Barron. I love it. I love the non-need picks in the draft. I think Barron has a chance to be that guy opposite Surtain, but Barron's just a fantastic football player. Texas was using him in and around the line of scrimmage, nickel, outside. He could do it all. So I love what the Broncos have defensively, right? So they already had one of the best defenses. Fierce pass rush coming from a whole bunch of solid players, including maybe a star in Nick Bonito, the way he played in the second half of the season. But then they had Drake Greenlaw at linebacker coming off of his injury. They had Talanoa Hufanga at safety, a couple former 49ers. So I think one of the better defenses in the NFL last year adds more pieces. Doesn't always work, translate to being better, but, man, they have a chance to be as good, if not better, next year.
It should be. They locked Zach Allen up to a long-term deal as well. I'm really curious to see, can Nick Bonito continue the run that he had last year, where he looked like one of the most dynamic pass rushers, certainly from a situational point of view, in the entire NFL. If that was his breakout season and that's who he's going to be going forward, I mean, he was a problem for offenses to block. This could be a spectacular defense again. Love the Jahdae Barron pick. I think it works perfectly within this defense as well. He's so versatile. He gives them backup options everywhere. He's a bit like different players, but a bit like Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, where the flexibility he gives you because he could play multiple different positions. Brian Branch in Detroit as well, same idea. He can be your safety. He can be your nickel. He could play outside if you needed him to in a pinch. Jahdae Barron now gives them so much injury insulation because of what he can do.
Zach Allen just got paid, defensive tackle, edge type of hybrid player. John Franklin Myers up front. You mentioned Bonito. We both mentioned Bonito. Jonathan Cooper. Let me say solid again. I mean, that's one of those, in the aggregate, that's a whole bunch of good, effective pass rushers that helped the Broncos have one of the best pass rushes in the NFL last year. Plus, they're not afraid to blitz. They're not afraid to get after it and mix it up and be aggressive. So I think you have another good defense this year. 9.5 is the over-under for the Broncos. I've gone over for the first two.
Right.
I really think...
find an under somewhere.
I know. I think this division has a chance to challenge the Norths. I think the AFC North is going to be strong. The NFC North is going to be strong. Are we looking at the AFC West as the second or third best division in football here?
It could easily be. I mean, genuinely, 3 of the 4 teams, I think, should be good to very good, and the 4th might not be bad at all because of what they added. So, yeah, I'm with you, and I even went under with the Chiefs. But even with going under for them, it's like, can all 3 of those teams win double-digit games and, be in the playoffs? Again. I guess, yeah, let's go over for Denver.
I'm going to go under, even though I like them. Somebody's got to go under. Got to go under here somewhere.
Somebody's got to lose.
Somebody has to lose at some point.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
Check the Mic is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit this subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
The all-knowing algorithm is convinced that you'll like these videos as well, and frankly, who are we to argue?